Hello and welcome to this session on using databases for storing networking data. Why might you choose to use a database? One reason would be because of the volume of data that you are storing is so great that it would exceed the capacity for using normal text files. Another reason for using databases is because you have multiple tables, perhaps with relationships to one another. Databases are well suited for such a thing. Another reason might be that you intend to do searching for a specific item of data in the database. Also, filtering is similarly related. Searching and filtering are operations that are made efficient and fine-tuned in many databases. How do you communicate with your database? Well, the first thing that you need to do is establish a connection to the database. Once you have connected with the database file, you can then get a cursor to the file, which will allow you to do things such as create tables and write entries into tables. You will need to perform SQL commands in an SQL database. SQL commands fall into categories that are often referred to as create, read, update, and delete. Those operations will be performed using standard SQL commands that you will pass to the library that you use for communicating with the database. And in Python, there happens to be a simple and easy to use library called SQLite. The version is SQLite 3, which allows you to do simple database operations. How will you create a table in the database? In this example, we're going to show you how to create a devices table in your database. As we mentioned, the first step is to get a connection to the database, which we do using SQLite 3.connect function. We pass in the name of the file, which is the database on your system. The next step is to get the cursor to the database so we can perform operations. Once you've done that, you will need to execute SQL commands that will allow you to do the operations that you intend on performing. In our situation, we're going to create a table in the database. The SQL command, as you can see, is within the parentheses of the execute function. The command reads create table if not exists. This will create the table in the database if it does not already exist. The name of the table will be called devices. We're going to pass in the fields for this table. The fields will be name, which is the primary key, IP address, OS type, username, and password. Once we've executed that command, we now have a devices table in the database. At this point, we can actually write entries into this table. In this example, we will use a for loop going through our devices list in order to write entries into the database table. Within our for loop, we are going to create an SQL command that says replace into the name of the table, which happens to be devices. The things that we are going to write into it are name, IP, OS, user, and password. Remember, those are the fields from the table that we created. The values that we're giving it at this point in time are listed as question marks because we will be substituting those with the actual values. And those values get substituted when we execute this SQL command that we just created. When we do this, we will pass in the device name, device IP address, OS type, username, and password. This for loop will write lines into the table, one for each device in the devices list. When we're done writing entries into the table, we need to be sure to perform a commit operation on the database in order for the changes to be actually written to the database. How can we then read information from this particular table in the database? Again, the first operation that we need to perform is establishing a connection to the database. The second operation will be to get the cursor. What we will do now is we're going to actually read the entire table into a Python structure, and we're going to perform this operation using the fetch all command. The actual SQL command that we're performing is a select command, and we say select star, meaning everything from the name of the table, which is devices. After we have executed this SQL command, we perform the function fetchAll, which will take all of that data from the table and it will put it into Python data structures that will be stored in devices from DB. What we will end up with in this situation is a list of tuples. The list will be the list of all the devices, and the tuples will represent one item for every field in our table. This is how you will read and write information from a database in Python.